Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and tonight we got a really awesome show for you. The panel consists of Nicole Weber, who is my co-host. Say hi, Nicole.
Hello. Welcome, everybody.
My maven of the chat room, Odessa, bottom left.
Hey, everybody.
My good friend Nos, right below me.
Greetings, Terrence.
And Nancy Timms. Welcome back, Nancy.
Hi.
The guest tonight that I'm having on is a very good friend of mine. Terry and I have been friends for a few years now, and he's a person I can always pick up the phone and just chat with. He graciously accepted my offer to come back onto the channel because I think people need to take a deeper look into his incident at Devil's Den. Please welcome my good friend, Terry Lovelace.
Yay.
Welcome.
Thanks for the nice introduction, UFO Man, and it is a pleasure to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. Really good. Tonight, we're going to focus on the people in the chat room who don't know much about your story and the people online that have never heard it before. But before we do that, I'd like to take a moment to show sympathy to the family of John Yost, my friend who passed away recently from cancer. He was very impactful within the UFO community, and he will be sorely missed. He came out with a movie a couple of years ago. If you get a chance, please watch his film. Remember his impact in his life, and keep his family in your prayers. Thank you very much. Okay. This live stream is being sponsored by a good friend of mine that I just made recently, and we've become friends. The company is called Triumvirate Toys and Games, and they came out with a fantastic new immersive experience card game called Interstellar Abduction, and they wanted me to play my ad. Here it is. Fantastic card game coming out on February 21st, launched on Kickstarter. It's called Interstellar Abduction, a card game where humans are abducted. Pick up a copy today and begin. You can find the link in the description. Thank you. If you get a chance, go over after this live stream, go down below in the description. There is a link to the Kickstarter page. When you go there, you will find out more information about the game, and you will know the release date, so you can pick up your copy then. Thank you very much. All right, now let's get into the live stream. Terry, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Here we go.
Fair enough. Ask me anything.
Right.
Okay, could you start with a little bit about your background before you got into what happened at Devil's Den?
You mean
Kind of like
Devil's Den?
you were in the Air Force.
Yeah,
for a
I was.
while.
Graduated from high school in 1973 and then spent 6 years in the Air Force. I've got, I'd like to talk about my experience when I was 8 years old.
Yes, okay, let's do that.
Yeah, I was 8 years old in my backyard, St. Louis, Missouri. We lived in a, modest little row house or red brick homes, all the same. Tiny backyard. And it was a Saturday. It was a sunny day. It was beautiful outside. And I'm in the backyard. This would have been 1963. And I have this bow and arrow set my uncle gave me that was like an adult bow and arrow set. And, I never give my kid, any kid at 8 years of age.
Right.
But but the times were different, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm shooting these arrows into a bale of hay, and as I'm looking down to put a arrow in the notch, the bowstring, and I see this elliptical shadow move over my feet. And I looked up, and over my head is this silver disc, more like aluminum, like polished aluminum. And I don't know, I was 8, not a good judge of distance, but I'd say 20 feet in diameter and probably 40 feet above me.
Wow.
And I'm looking, as a kid, I put together model airplanes. So I'm looking for a propulsion system. I'm looking for rivets,
Right.
some kind of markings. And of course, there was nothing. It's just flat aluminum. And it wobbled a little bit in the breeze. And this is weird. The grass had just been cut. And I decided I could get a better view of it by lying down. And that makes no sense. The other thing that's interesting was the second I laid eyes on it, I thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw in my life. I was just stunned. It was great. It was a great experience. And this neighborhood was busy. I mean, there were people cutting grass, hanging up laundry. There were cars and trucks and cats and kids. But as soon as I laid eyes on this thing, all of the sounds went muffled. I could still hear stuff going on, but it was like I had hands pressed against my ears. And that I was in that state until, the few minutes that I sat there or stood there watching it. And then it kind of did a list to starboard and shoots off like 0 to 500 miles an hour. And I was impressed. I thought that was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And of course, no one would believe me. No one would believe me. And, I wasn't a kid who told stories or lied, and that upset me. But if you want to get teased and be a target of ridicule, hopefully it's different today. I hope.
A lot of people have said in the chat that they also experienced the sound dampening when they had their encounter. My friend Tom Reed also stated that when they saw the craft, everything went silent in the woods.
Yes.
So it must be some type of effect that comes from the propulsion systems of the vehicle, maybe, that silences the woods. I don't know, but it seems to be a common occurrence.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a very common thing. I got, all these emails from folks, and there are a lot of people that tell me that they experienced that. I think I went over on one of your shows when in June 1977, my friend Toby and I were camping, We didn't stay in a campground. We went and found our own spot, and we found this cool plateau, and we went to the top of it, and the view was amazing, and we set up a camp there. And while we're up there, we're having a conversation, and I noticed that I'd never been camping before. I'm a city guy, so was Toby. And the crickets, tree frogs, all the stuff that makes noise at night in the woods, they were loud enough that I really had to speak up to be heard. And likewise, my friend had to speak loud. And
Right.
we're talking, and a few minutes later, it went absolutely dead silent. Not only did it go silent, it was still. It was June, in Missouri, northern Arkansas. It was hot, and we had been enjoying a little bit of a breeze, and that stopped. And the only thing I could hear was the campfire crackle, and that really unnerved me. And my friend blew it off and made fun of me and said, don't worry about the bugs. The bugs will come back, And,
Right.
yeah, they never did come back.
Yeah. Do you remember anything after sighting the disc?
The disc, the triangle, are we talking about?
No, I was talking about the shiny polished aluminum disc that you
Yes.
saw above your head. Do you remember
Yes.
anything after that?
Afterward, I had this I felt elated. I mean, I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt like I saw something special, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know how long I stood there watching it, but I watched it for a time. And to me, it had that same kind of eye appeal that, you know, like a new Ferrari would have on a showroom floor. You know, it was just cool. And yeah, and I felt cheated that I didn't get to see the top of it. And 3 years later, they'd visit me again, and I did get to see the top of it.
Yeah. What you expected?
Yeah, it was what I expected based on you know, pop culture media. Um, there were a lot of UFO and space type shows back in 1963. You know, Lost in Space, My Mother the Car was a strange show. You know, the Flintstone cartoon show even had a little animated character in a little flying saucer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him. What was
I don't
his
remember
name?
his name, but yeah. So I mean, it was a cultural thing. It was common knowledge, and I expected there to be a half dome on top of the thing, dead center, um, and lights emitting out of it, and that's exactly what I saw.
Live Life in the chat says, "Oh, so Terry had sightings prior to Devil's Den."
Mhm.
So
Come
that
again?
would be. Live Life says, "Oh, so Terry had sightings prior to Devil's Den," and the answer would be yes.
The answer is yes.
Have you
Yes.
had alien contact in any of those sightings?
Those
Direct
first two
one of them.
sightings, I had no contact with anything other than the seeing the craft. I'll tell you what was cool. The second sighting that I had, I was 11 years old. I was in my bed. I was sound asleep, and I woke up with these flashing lights in my room, and they were just absolutely very, very bright, and yellow and orange and green and kind of like multicolored. And I'm thinking, I wake up and I'm thinking, fire truck. Oh, cool. You know, place across the street must be on fire, you know. And I hop out and I go to the window. My room faced the street on the second story. And it was an old house, drafty old house. So it had heavy draperies. And then in back, it had Venetian blinds. So I pulled back the drapery and I'm looking out of the blinds and I see this top of the saucer. And it is right next to the bottom of the window of my bedroom. I could have raised the window and stepped onto it. And it
Wow.
was, I could not see where the lights, I didn't see like a fixture where the lights were emitted from. It was
Right.
just a silver dome and light coming out of it. So I don't know how that works. Again, the thing was polished aluminum. I still didn't see, I looked, I didn't see any rivets. I didn't see any markings. I didn't see any means of propulsion. And there was a cloud, a mist of cloud, like thick fog underneath the thing. Now,
Wow.
it was like 11 degrees outside. That may have had something
Right.
to do with it. But, and you know what's interesting is I looked at that thing and I felt very satisfied. I felt sure that, you know, the first time they came and I saw them wasn't an accident. You know, this time they came back to me intentionally. So that was a big deal to me in my 11-year-old mind.
So maybe
Yeah,
they
okay.
came back intentionally to show you the top of the saucer because that's what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Nicole?
Mm-hmm. I'm just listening at just like if you kind of give us a little bit, go more into some of your experiences, because you said that but prior to this, you had other ones, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been in contact like directly with beings? And if so, which did you experience?
Yeah. I want to tell my early childhood, like ages 4 through 7, almost and 8, but mostly intensely from ages 4 through 7. And it wasn't constant, you know, it was sporadic. And what I saw, and this is hard for people to wrap their heads around. It's hard for me to wrap my head around. I saw little circus monkeys. I know, 4 of them. And I got emails from people who saw deer, raccoons, balls of light, Disney characters, My Little Pony animated. And I think there's a reason for that. I think these things are so smart that they can appear to a child in a way the child will find most benign. And I think that was the reason for that.
Yeah.
Can
But
they
they
also
abducted me.
appear though in shapes that are not benign?
I'm
Because
sorry.
I saw, can they appear in shapes that are not benign? Because when I was young, I saw a 4 foot tall, 6 foot wide black spider.
Wow, I've heard that.
And
Thankfully, I didn't have that experience. Although as I got older, I resented them coming and taking me, and I didn't want to go anymore.
Can you
I have
describe the beings and what they look like? Or were they the same? It's like I've experienced 3 different, distinctive types. So can you kind of go into what they look like, or did they always look like the monkeys?
they took me. I don't know how they took me because from the time they entered my room, and what's crazy was the one nearest the head of my bed would hold out a paw, a monkey paw, and telepathically say, "Terry, come with us. We'll go play. We'll have fun." And that was the same scenario every time they came. And for years, I'd had just terrible nightmares about that, where I'm in my room and I'm in my bed and the monkeys are there and they hold out a paw, but it's not a paw. It's, 4 gray long fingers.
Mhm.
And I just kind of flip out.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I have to say that childhood experiences are different in a lot of ways. My buddy, like Paul, he said that they used to come in and play a game called Paul the Ball and pounce, like bounce them around and how they looked and kind of try playing games like with him. So, but I know there is a distinctive difference between somebody like me who experienced later in life in a childhood experiencer, because I know a few of them, and it's just fascinating all through your life, how this like transitions and
That contact seems to last throughout a lifetime.
right.
When they took me as a child, I don't know how we got there, but I would suddenly be in this large white room. The ceiling was dome shaped, and the carpeting was beige or something. And I don't know how we got there, but every time I was there, there'd be the same group of kids, and I didn't recognize these kids from the neighborhood. And we were all in our night clothes, and there was a lady there that I called Sue. I called her Sue because she reminded me of the Japanese woman who lived in back of us, because their eyes were similar. And that's what I called her, and she was fine with that. I was fine with that. And we played games too, but one of the things they had us do, or she had us do, she had these geometric, like a block, a ball, a triangle, or a pyramid, I should say, made out of some kind of colored matter. And when you pick it up, it's like the thing had no mass. It's like it didn't weigh anything. It's weird. And we sat like just cross-legged on the floor in a semicircle, and we put this thing down in front of us. And the object of the exercise is we had to move it with our mind. They wanted us to do that. And I did it once, and I mean, the thing tumbled over. I had was it the cube? I think it was a pyramid, and it just tumbled over. And she came over and gave me high praise for it. And everybody ended up doing it to some extent. And I don't know what the object of that exercise was. I mean, what
can you
were
still
they?
do it today? Have you tried? I
I'm
think you
sorry?
should try. I think you should try and do it. See if you're able to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Has anybody heard of Deb Cobble?
Yeah, we
Yes.
just had her on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deb is a friend, and she had experiences in Michigan where she was taken and played with the neighborhood kids, and I mean, just identical to mine. I'd be curious if we weren't maybe on the same ship. I don't know.
Right.
Could
Yeah.
be. Could be. Yeah, we just had her on last week. Or the week before last week.
Week
So
before
2
last,
weeks ago. Yeah. So let's get more into your experience at Devil's Den. How did the camping trip idea come into play? How did that start, Jerry?
Sure. My friend Toby and I, we worked together. I was a medic. I was trained as a medic and an EMT both. And we worked in the emergency room together, usually from 11 o'clock p.m. to about 8 a.m. in the morning. And loved my job. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't want it to be my career, but you know, to hang out in the Air Force for 6 years, it wasn't bad at all. And we were playing hearts because there's not a lot going on at night. I mean, it's not much happening unless the phone rings and there's been a car wreck or a plane crash or something, and then it's different. But for the most part, it's quiet. And we're playing hearts, and Toby says, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And I'm like, "Camping? Are you nuts? I mean, I know I'm a city kid. I think you're a city kid, Toby. Where'd this all come from?" And he told me he ran into a guy who fished who told him about Devil's Den and told him about there's some kind of plateau there that would be a really cool place to be. And it was a 6-hour drive from where we were. And we were in a town called Knob-Noster, Missouri. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere. There was a Missouri State Park right outside the gate to the base. And there was not much but a few farms and trees all the way down to the Arkansas border. So I'm like, why don't we just camp here? And he's like, no. He says, the journey, the travel's half the fun. That's the adventure. Let's go see something different. And I was an amateur photographer, and he was just an incredibly smart guy interested in the sky. And he wanted to get out of the Air Force. We both planned to get out, attend college, and he already had everything mapped out. He wanted to go to University of Michigan and study astronomy or physics or cosmology, something like that, and get a postgraduate degree and teach. But he loved the night sky, and he knew all the constellations, and he could point stuff out. It was just crazy. And because I said, why don't we stay in the campground? We got electricity, we got running water. And he's like, yeah, but you know what? It's light pollution. He said, I won't be able to see a thing. So I'm like, yeah, you got a point there. And then he made a point. He says, you're going to be able to get pictures of eagles and God knows what kind of wildlife that you're not going to get in a campground. So I kind of got sold on the idea. And it was strange because it started as an idea and really grew into almost an obsession. It did.
I get that.
We talked about it in April. In June, we had some time off. And we had a 5-day weekend arranged. And that's when we were going to make our trip. So June came, we packed the car, we drove down, crossed the border from Missouri. As you're looking at the map, on the west side is Devil's Den State Park. On the right side is the Ozark National Forest. And I don't know. I should probably tell you guys a little bit about Devil's Den.
Yeah, please.
I didn't know it had a creepy history. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, exactly. Where's that located?
Oh, it's in the northwest corner of Arkansas.
Okay.
Right as you cross the border. Like I said, it's next to Ozark National Forest and Devil's Den State Park. And it is remote. And And I'm sure it's not so remote today. The people go there, and one of the attractions is the Butterfield Trail that cuts through there. And it used to be a stagecoach line used to cut through there, that from 1858 to 1860. And then, depending on if you're in the South or in the North, either the war between the states or the Civil War, heated up in 1861. And that was the end of the Butterfield stagecoach line. But it kept the name. And there were lots of deaths there, lots of people killed. It was just ideal place for a firefight because you had, these cliffs, limestone cliffs and stuff, and it was a bloody place.
Right.
And there are the caves. There are caves there.
Oh wow.
A
that
lot.
are supposedly really cool, but you can't go into them.
Mm.
And they are barred off and heavily locked, and you can't go in there, and nobody can tell you what's in there. And when we started to go, when I started to write the book, I researched the area, and I talked to that land is there. There are 2 Native American tribes who lay claim to that land, and one tribe is called the Catos, Cato. And the other tribe is, I can't remember. But
That's okay.
I called and managed to find a woman who was a medicine woman in the Cantu tribe. And I called her up and I said, I'm writing a book about Devil's Den. What can you tell me? And she was kind of distant at first, but I talked to her and she relaxed and we kind of had a nice conversation. And she said, look, my people can transit through Devil's Den, but we won't camp there because it's bad land. We just go across it. And I said, well, what makes it bad? And she says, it's cursed. And I said, well, somebody has to place a curse for it to be in effect. How did it come to be cursed land? And she says, we don't know. It's just as far as we know, forever it's been cursed. And from Arkansas State University, I talked to a guy who is an archaeologist who is into the Paleo period and has said that they did some limited looking in Devil's Den, and they never found a single artifact, not a single arrowhead, not, shards from pottery, nothing. But they find it all around. So, for some reason, people haven't wanted to live there for a long time.
So it's different between haunted and cursed. Cursed is a totally, don't you think?
Yes.
But there is,
Yeah.
something that's cursed. So can you kind of go into what do you know any of the history or what the curse was? I'm very curious.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Let me tell you about in 1947, there was a big camping craze in the United States. Pull behind campers were like the thing. I don't know why, 2 years post the end of World War II, it was popular. And there was a family from Philadelphia. And the little girl's name was Catherine Van Alst. And she had a father, a mother, and 2 little brothers, younger than she was. And she was about 10. And they were going to, I forget, it's Laredo, or they were going to someplace that they had a destination in Texas in mind. And they stopped to spend the night at Devil's Den State Park. They spent the first night there, had an uneventful evening. They wake up, it's 7 a.m., mom's making breakfast outside, the old man's sleeping, and the 2 boys are running around the camper like kids will do. And the mom says, where's Catherine? And the boys are like, well, she's right here. Well, she was right here. And, mom's annoyed and says, boys, go find your sister. So they
Right.
ran to the bathrooms and looked for her there, and she wasn't there. So they come back and she's like, we can't find her. So the old man wakes up and he gets involved, and then some other campers get involved, and then the park ranger got involved, and then they were the Arkansas State Park Rangers, and then they called for help from the Ozark National Forest. The federal rangers came to help, and she just vanished. She was wearing a swimsuit and
Wow.
shower thong sandals, and that's all. And from that campsite, if you walked into the forest, the brush was so heavy, it would be a challenge for an adult to walk through. And the land is just, there are peaks and valleys and difficult terrain.
Right.
They couldn't find her anywhere, and they have a massive search that lasts for 7 days. And at the end of the 7th day, it was to transition from a recovery mission to a recovery mission. And they had busloads of students from Arkansas State University there who were helping with the search. And there was a guy, and I forget his name. Forget his name. Anyway, this kid, this college student, is walking around in an area that's already been searched 4 times, and it's at the top of a limestone peak. And you would the only way to get up, it's so steep that you have to go through a series of cross tracks, like zigzag, because the incline's so steep. And I
Right.
forget in David Paulides' book, I think it's his 4th book called The Devil is in the Details. The story's
Right.
in there. And I think he said the elevation is like 600 feet. He's walking on top of this plateau to the top of this big rock, and he's calling out, Catherine. And a little girl pops up and says, here I am. And he's like, oh my God. And he breaks down and he picks her up, and he's like, crying and laughing. And nobody expected to find her alive.
Right.
And she was alive and in great shape. So they get back to the campground, and she's examined. They got a doctor. It's weird. Where she was found was the top of this limestone thing, rock, whatever you want to call it, a little mountain or whatever. There was no potable water up there anywhere. And she was not dehydrated. She hadn't lost
Wow.
an ounce of weight. The mother said that her hair still smelled clean, because it was shampooed the night before she vanished. And just a crazy, weird story. I tried to find her. I would have loved to talk to her,
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Interview
kidding.
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go further into your story in regards to Devil's Den, or shall we say, where you got to your campsite.
Okay. Let me tell real quick the story of Rodney Letterman. I can make it quick
Okay.
because I was writing
Okay.
the book in 2017, and this event happened in 2017. While I was writing the book, I got a bunch of Arkansas newspapers and looked through them every day for information about Devil's Den. And in early 2017, there was a woman that went missing who jumped off one of these cliffs, and her death was ruled a suicide. And that's all we know. And then there was a guy from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, named Rodney Letterman. And Rodney and his friend drove down to Devil's Den State Park, and they wanted to hike the Butterfield Trail. That's a long drive to walk the Butterfield Trail, but Toby and I drove it, so it wasn't that much farther. So they get out of the truck, they're doing their hike, they're just and it's an easy trail to walk. And Rodney Letterman was an asthmatic, and he had an asthma attack, and he asked his friend, "Would you run back to the truck? I'm sorry, I left my inhaler there." And the guy's like, "Sure, no sweat." So he runs back to the parking lot, gets in the truck, finds the inhaler, runs back, is gone, in his words, 15 minutes, no more. And no Rodney Letterman. All that's left is his cell phone is on the ground.
Wow.
And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't lay my cell phone on the ground.
Right.
Nobody would. And he was gone. And I said in the back of my book, if I get an update on Rodney Letterman, I'll tell you. And I addressed that in the second book, The Reckoning. This was 2019, early 2019. I want to say March, and there was a man and a woman, a couple, walking on the trail, and there are kind of like logs that make a walkway on either side of the trail. And sitting on top of this log, this woman says, "Hey, is that an albino turtle? What is that?" And they look and they walk over and they picked it up, and it was the top of Rodney Letterman's skull.
Oh my God.
Oh,
And that's all they ever found of Rodney Letterman. It went back to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where the coroner examined it. They did DNA. It was Rodney's skull. But, I used to be a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, the first thing crossed my mind is that sounds like a staged scene, like something
right.
a criminal would do to say, this is my, I was here.
Right.
Right.
My MO, whatever. Like a
Because I don't
signature.
think there's any way it could pop up there and set right in the middle of this thing by accident on this trail. Doesn't make sense. And they found no other bones. None. So that's the Rodney Letterman story.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like it kind of falls in line with a lot of the missing 411 information that Paulides has in his books. So that's very interesting. Kind of makes you wonder whether it was a predator that got Rodney Letterman or if it was something other, because with the fact that his skull cap was there but nothing else, it makes you think predation kind of. But if it was staged, it almost makes you think something else, tribal, maybe even. What I was going to say is Live Light said just part of the skull was there, and that is accurate, correct?
That it was
Okay.
referred to in the writing as a skull, the skull cap, the quote top of the skull. So I guess it's just the top of the kid's head.
Wow, that's terrible. Okay. Let's go further into your encounter, or should I say incident at Devil's Den. How did you
Sure.
get up?
Let me
Can
go
you
back if
tell
I
us-
could.
Okay.
So when we're at the campfire and we're sitting around the campfire, I'm on one side, Toby's on the other. It goes dead silent, and the only thing I can hear is the campfire. And Toby says, "Don't worry about the bugs; they'll come back." I never did, but I'm uneasy, and my friend has his head turned to the west, and he says to me, "Hey Terry, were those lights there before?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what lights? What are you talking about? There's no lights, for 50 miles from here." And I couldn't see because his torso was in the way. We were sitting on these air mattresses. So I stood up and I walked over, and on the western horizon, there were 3 little stars, and they were all about the same brightness, same luminosity, and they were sitting just above the horizon, and they were too far off the horizon to have been, from a mall parking lot or a train or, and we thought, well, maybe it's an aircraft. We couldn't think of any kind of aircraft that would have that kind of light configuration. And while we're looking at them, they moved, they rotated, they turned about 120 degrees clockwise, and the base of the triangle was aligned with the horizon, and then with the apex of the triangle pointed up. And we're witnessing some pretty strange stuff, and our emotions, our reactions were muted. We should have been, man, you seeing what I'm seeing? What the hell is that? But there was none of that. And this thing starts to rise and starts to go up in the sky. And as it does, I felt a feeling, I felt unsettled because of the silence in the woods and kind of apprehensive. And I immediately transitioned to a semi-sedated state. And I was in an odd place. I felt like an observer, a third party more than a participant. And I had a drug called Versed, was given to me one time. And it had some weird pre-surgery kind of deal. And that's kind of what I felt like. We watched this thing go up into the sky until it reached what I call, the altitude. It came to a stop, and it changed orientation. So we didn't see three lights anymore. The thing turned, and we saw three lights because the point of the triangle was headed in our direction. And it started a glide plane coming down. And what was interesting is, on the way down, this thing did a somersault. It did two of them, where the point of the triangle in the front, the apex, would dip down and do a complete somersault. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I felt intuitively, I just felt like that was done for our benefit. Was it? I don't know, but that's what I thought. Hey, look at us. And this thing cruised in, and the points of light really lit up the top treetops, and they dimmed a little bit. And this thing came to a stop about 3,000 feet over our heads, which felt like it was right on top of us, but it was 3,000 feet above. And that feeling of sedation that I felt, and Toby felt the same thing. We discussed it a little bit afterward. Transition suddenly to sleepy, and there's a distinction between feeling sedated and feeling sleepy. And all I wanted to do was pick up my air mattress, go back, throw it in the tent, fall on top of it, and go to sleep. That's all I wanted to do. And that's what we did. And the last thing I remember was thinking, you were wrong, Toby, because the bugs never did come back.
Right.
And I was out. And I didn't know how long I was out. After the fact, we figured out a time frame. It had to be about an hour before sunrise. But we both had nice wind-up mechanical watches, kind of state of the art of the day. Both of our watches quit running. And the thing with mechanical watches is they come with a warranty that says that your warranty is void if you take it around, a high magnetic field. So, if you work in, someplace where they have big machinery that generates a magnetic field, don't wear that watch.
Right.
So both of our watches stopped. Mine stopped at 2:30 on the nose. Toby stopped at 2:33. And those watches never ran again.
Wow.
So I woke up to these bright lights again, kind of like when I was 11. And I'm seeing these orange lights flashing through and then white lights too, flashing through the canvas of the tent. And I'm thinking, what is this? And my mind's racing, and I'm thinking, we're trespassing here, because we really were. We went around a gate, and I found out when I wrote the book in 2017 that we thought we were going like into some kind of nature preserve or something, but where we went isn't even a part of the state park. It's owned by it's federal land.
Oh, wow.
Owned by the Bureau of Land Management, and it's still deeded to them to this day. And where was I headed?
Yeah, why are they mowing the lawn up there if it's
Yeah,
completely
that's a great
fenced off?
question. You know, taxpayers are paying. You know, I didn't bother to go to Google Earth and look for this plateau because I'm thinking, 40 some years, that's going to be covered with mature trees, right? And I told that to the guys when I was on Amazing Legends, late 2018. And the guy's name, how appropriate is this? The guy's name is Forrest, right? And he says, I'm going to go on Google Earth and see what I can find. And I'll be damned. It's still there. It's still there. And they cut the top of it. They keep it clear cut. And I had, when I was on Facebook, I had posted pictures of it. And a guy I talked to regularly was not a gardener, but a, yard guy.
Landscaper, right.
Yeah, landscaper. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. He was able to blow this up, and he said that he can see tractor treads on it. And he said his words were, it's cut with a tractor towing a brush hog. And it's cut with regularity. So why are U.S. taxpayers paying for some guy to come with his tractor and mow the top of a plateau in Devil's Den State Park?
Right. Yeah.
Isn't it actually just outside the edge of Devil's Den State Park?
It is outside the dividing line. Toby and I were driving, and I came to a chain across the road with a big sign posted: no trespassing, no hunting, no fishing, no camping, no swimming, no nothing. And I stopped the car, and I'm going to back up, and we're going to go back and look for someplace else, right? And Toby says, no, wait, man, I got this. He hops out of the car. On the passenger side, on his side of the car, there were two posts. And what the Rangers had done was they'd taken this chain and looped it and made a noose out of it and put a padlock on it. And then there was a nail in that post, and they just draped the chain on that nail. So when they came and wanted to go in, they could just drop it and not have to, look for keys. So that's what we did. Toby picked it up, dropped it to the ground, and we were like, woohoo. I mean, we felt like Lewis and Clark, and we drive in, and we're going to find our place to camp. And we camped on the edge of the plateau. We had a back and forth. Toby wanted to camp I wanted to camp right in the middle of the thing, about where that pin is. And Toby said, no, let's camp near the edge. We'll be closer to, the wildlife is going to be into trees. We're not going to be able to see anything from there. And we went back and forth and finally, all right, that's fine. And I'm so glad he did. Because in the morning, I woke up from sleep to these flashing lights coming through the canvas of the tent. Like I said, I thought it was a park ranger's truck. And I sat up and I'm confused. I'm like, where am I? And then I remember, oh yeah, Toby and I are on a camping trip, tent. And I'm thinking these are the overhead lights that a ranger's truck would have.
Right.
And so that's what I thought. And I thought, they're going to kick us out. That's no big deal. And I looked down and my boots had been unlaced. And I know for a fact I did not go to bed with them like that. And it didn't scare me, but it annoyed me. And I took them off and my socks were on sideways. Now, the military teaches you to take care of your feet.
Yep.
I do that to this day, I would never do. So, and I'm confused, and it hasn't dawned on us yet that we've been undressed and redressed by someone. And I put them on properly and laced up my boots. And Toby is on his knees looking out, and he is fixated on looking at something. And I'm like, Toby, man, what is it? What's out there? Is it park rangers? And I didn't get an answer from him. So I'm on my knees. I look out of the right side of the tent, and I look through the flap of my tent, and I see two things. And that is that thing that was over us when we went to bed at 3,000 feet has descended, and it's now 30 feet off of the meadow. So, and thank God we're offset from it. Otherwise, we've been right underneath it. So we're on the edge of the plateau, and this thing, the lights that I was seeing were the lights from the points on the triangle, and they were so bright because this thing was just 30 feet over our heads. And the second thing that I saw was 12, maybe 15. I should have counted them, and I didn't. Little guys. Just classic little gray guys, tad over 3 feet tall. And they were walking around that plateau like they were tourists or something. They were just ambling around, and they're kind of jammed up in 2s and 3s. And they're walking around, and they're just looking at stuff. And I can't really see them other than a dim silhouette until these lights flash that are on the points of the triangle. And then I could see them. But from my distance, I didn't get a close-up look at them. But I could tell that they were gray, that they were short, and that they were identical. And I have a theory about this. And Calvin Parker, rest his soul,
Right.
and I talked about this. He had a very similar experience in Pascagoula. And he said to me, I think them things are little robots. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's what they are, or at least the ones that we saw. I got a bunch of mad emails from people saying, no, you're all wrong. They're this, they're that, well, I think there's probably more than one kind. But the ones that I saw, I think were manufactured. And I think that it's a combination of, AI and a little bit of biomaterial maybe, and nanotechnology, who knows what. But I think these things are assembled. And I don't think that they are, I think they're smart. They're not sentient in the way that you and I are. They're not
Right.
living beings. And that was my opinion of them. And their eyes weren't huge. Their eyes were just like a pair of wraparound Ray-Bans. Was as big as the ones that I saw. And we didn't realize that we'd even been abducted. And they were leaving. They were at the end of their program. And while we're watching these things walk around the meadow, and we're scared to death, we're absolutely frightened to death because we're afraid one of us is going to cough or sneeze or knock something over, and it's going to attract their attention, and they're going to come check us out. We had no way of knowing. They were long done with us. And from underneath this thing, a light clicked on, just like somebody hits a switch. And there was a beam of white light. And this white light had a milky texture to it, like, how
Okay.
high-powered searchlight cuts through fog, like on
Right.
the water.
Yeah.
And you see this column of white light. That's what
Right.
this looked like, but there was no fog. And that landed right in the middle of our campfire and stayed there for a minute or two. And then, boom, click, just turned off. And that happened earlier at the campfire. Now, the light that came out from underneath the thing was that column of light, and it was the same consistency, that milky white texture, but it was 30 feet wide, and it was a circle from what I could see. And I say it's 30 feet wide because this thing, I estimated it was 30 feet off the ground, and this beam of light was 30 feet wide. It was the same width as the thing was off the ground. And as soon as that light kicked on, all these little guys turned their attention toward that light. And they all started making their way there in twos and threes. And when they got there, they formed a queue, they got in line, and they would step into this light in ones or twos, and they would pixelate out. At the time, in 1977, I had seen the old Star Trek episodes that
Right.
had the transporter or something. I'm not a science fiction fan, never have been. But that is exactly what they look like when they just pixelated out and disappeared. And we watched them until the last two guys disappeared, and then the light shuts off. And then there was a low humming sound. I said they were silent, but actually there had been a low humming sound, but I guess we had grown accustomed to hearing it, and just we didn't notice it until it was turned off.
Right.
And that noise stopped. And then this thing takes off, but it doesn't take off like a rocket ship. It just lifts off and floats up into the air more like a hot air balloon. And the higher it goes, the faster it goes. And the lights on the tips of the points of the triangle get brighter and brighter. And we watched until it was three stars, and then 1 star, and then gone.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, let's get out of here. I got my car keys in my hand. And I'm like, wait a minute, how do I know that they're really, really gone? And Toby's like, no, man, they're gone. Let's go. And then I have a change of heart, and I'm like, you know what? All I got is a piece of canvas over my head, but it gives me cover. And I'm going to stay here until dawn. And we had no idea what time it was. Luckily, it was just an hour before dawn. But Toby convinced we should leave now, and we did. We bolted. We ran to my car. I had my car keys in my wallet. Toby had this marginally working flashlight in his wallet, and we hopped in my old car and got the hell out of there. And we left everything there. We left Toby's backpack with his name and address, and phone number in it, the tent, his nice Coleman cooler, a bunch of stuff that I brought in a box. We left everything. And all we wanted is to put distance between us and Devil's Den. And we did. And a curious thing was that there was a change between Toby and I. While we used to be best of friends, we were newly married, our wives were friends. We played volleyball together, played cards together on the weekend, or with barbecue or something. And I can't reconcile this to this day. But I wanted nothing to do with the guy. And, people tell me, well, that's probably from the trauma. But what I found out is talking to Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFOs and Nukes. Robert Hastings talked to hundreds of abductees, and he is an admitted abductee himself. And he said it's common in the military that they bust those people up, send one to Alaska and, one to South America. And I mean, they bust people up. And I call it, the band breaks up. Because in these letters emails I got from people, I saw the same thing happen. A family saw something, they never talked about it. And this one email, 30 years after the event, they're having Thanksgiving dinner, and Uncle Joe, everybody's going to Uncle Joe, right? Uncle Joe speaks up at the table and says, hey, remember when we were at that hotel on vacation back in the day and we saw that big flying saucer? And he said that the room just fell silent. And he said it was really uncomfortable.
We have a question from our chat room, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know we're kind of working our way that direction, but Live Light asked if you have implants. It was mentioned in the thumbnail, and when and where did that occur?
The implants, I had no idea I had anything in my right leg. I retired from the state of Vermont in 2000, early retirement, January 1st, 2012. I retired, and we moved from Vermont to Dallas, where we have adult children and grandkids. And about 9 months after we landed here, probably it's November, I woke up one morning and I went to stand up and I couldn't bear weight on my right leg. And I get all my medical care from the VA. And I told my wife, I said, something's wrong with my leg. I can't put weight on the thing. You need to take me to the ER. And she did. And I waited, for hours, and then saw somebody and had an x-ray of my leg. And the tech was kind of acting confused, and she kept taking more pictures and different angles, and she took a whole lot of pictures. I got copies of them, and that's how I'm in possession of them. But they didn't want to give them to me. I mean, I had threatened to sue them to get them, but I have them. I have them on a disc, is how they gave them to us. And she said, she showed me the X-rays, and I saw in the calf of my right leg, the calf muscle, right in the middle, there was a floral arrangement of like Tic Tac things. There it is. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And she says, well, I'm going to have the radiologist come down and take a look. And then above my knee, I couldn't see it. That's plain to see. But above my knee, there was a metallic object. That's it. Metallic object about the size of a fingernail with 2 wires attached to it. And I enlarged it so you could see it, because it's tiny in the x-ray. It's hard to see. And that is on my right leg, lateral on the outside, and probably a couple inches deep. And that's the story for afterward, that x-ray. But I looked at these, and the radiologist said, well, you had to be in some kind of accident. He said, trauma is what causes this. And he pointed out that, he said, if you look, you can see calcification from one of the things starting to bend or starting to build between the two. And he said, you had some type of very severe injury to your right calf muscle, and that's what causes this. And he says, I've heard of it. I've seen it rarely, but he said, I've never seen it. I've never seen the bone arrange themselves in a symmetrical pattern like this. And then the thing above my knee, he says, and he kind of laughs. Yeah, look, there's even a little dot in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a pansy.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing above my knee, he makes a joke and said, did you have an accident? Did you run into a radio or something? And I'm like, no. I've never had an injury to the calf, or, I had a skinned knee on this leg as a kid, but I've never had any injury to it. And he says, well, you have had. He said, and you may not remember it, but this thing above your leg had to be placed there. You weren't born with it. And for them to place it there, they would have had to make an incision through skin and through fascia and embed that in your knee, or in your leg. And then they would have to close it, suture it. And he said, you have to have a scar. He says, it's impossible to violate that many layers of skin, put this thing in, and there not be a scar. It just doesn't happen. And I said, I ain't got no scar. So we got in this kind of back and forth, and I took my pants off. They flipped on the lights in the X-ray room, and this guy looked at my leg for a long time. Then he went and he took. I didn't know this, but scar tissue will fluoresce under a black light, and he had like a little handheld black light and looked at my leg, and there is no scar. And I said, well, doctor, how often is it that you see something like this and there not be a corresponding scar? And he said, never. He said, I've never seen this. I have no idea how this thing got into your leg. And I was stunned. I was stunned because I didn't know if it happened in 1977 or, 1969 or who knows. But I know who put it there, and I wanted them out of my body. I want those things out as fast as I could get them out. And what I hope to do, right after I published my book in March of 2018, I get a telephone call, and it's Tom DeLonge on a conference call with Lou Elizondo, some retired General McCardle or something like that. And I think Steve Justice may have been part of it. Anyway, these guys are all like with Chris Mellon and that group that's formed To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, the AATIP with the TTSA. Yeah, we know definitely. So who was it? Their guy that you went to, or they contacted you after? Like, how long ago was it that they contacted you?
This was like 30 days after I published the book on March 8th.
Okay.
Of 2018. And this was about 4 weeks later. I get a call, and my phone says Tom DeLonge, LA, and I got friends in LA. And Tom DeLonge rang a bell, but it was one of the songs on my daughter's wedding. I remember, at the. And so I knew the name, but I couldn't pull it up that quick, and so I didn't know who this guy is. And I'm like, "Hi, Tom, how are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm fine. I'm here with Lou Elizondo," and introduces me to his little group of people, and they want to ask me about this thing in my leg. And I said, "Yeah, I plan on having it removed as fast as I can get it done." And he said, "Do not have the thing in your calf muscle removed." He said, "That's bone tissue, and you don't want to take it out of your body. That's natural to your body, and you don't want to take it out of your body." And I said, "Okay, but I can take out the thing above my knee." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Take it out, and we'd love to have you share it with us." And I said, "Absolutely." And what I planned to do was, as I told him, I'm going to ask the doctor to do a forensic protocol like they do if they're taking a bullet out of somebody, where they, there's a trail of evidence where it goes from the surgeon into a, little manila envelope and gets sealed shut. And the doctor puts his name and the date and the time, and then hands it to the nurse, who does the same. And everybody that takes possession of that does that, so that there's this trail of evidence. So nobody can say that it's been switched.
Right.
And that was my concern. I wanted to make sure nobody could come up and say, "Oh, well, you went to Tijuana and you had some surgery." And so I'm all set to do this.
So are you well aware of who they are and that, there's CIA counterintelligence and all that stuff involved, and who Chris Mellon was? Or did you just kind of hear Tom DeLonge and, that they had some interest in it? Or because there is, I remember when they were coming out with the materials, I just did not make the connection there.
Yeah, I know them very well. I see them. I go to LA a couple times a year, and they're very interesting people.
I know Lou, but I don't know the rest of them.
Now, Lou's a great guy.
Did they take over then the implant? Did they had custody, or did you ever hand it over to them? Or
Well, here's what happened. In 2005, I had a heart attack, and the VA doctor, VA surgeon, looks at the x-ray and says, oh man, this is cool. I'll take that out for you. And he says, all you got to do is go to your cardiologist and get a cardiac clearance letter. And it's the standard of care in this country that if you've got something like what I had in my leg and it's not causing you a problem, you let it lay. And I got strong with this guy, and I'm like, look, I want this effing thing out of my body. Take it out of my body. He says, look, it's a risk versus benefit analysis. He says, if we open up your body, there's going to be a chance of infection. There's a chance for something to go sideways with anesthesia. He said there are all kinds of bad things that can happen during a routine surgery. And he said, if these things have been in your body and we have no idea how long they've been there, but they're not causing you a problem, the reason that I couldn't bear weight on my leg was I had what's called a Baker's cyst. Small cyst that forms right under your patella, right under your kneecap. And it causes pain, and you catch it like you catch a cold, and it lasts for 2 weeks. You take Tylenol and crutches, and then it goes away and never comes back. So that was the reason for my pain. Had nothing to do with the implants. So I went to civilian doctors, and I heard the same thing, standard of care in this country, the VA guy made a good point. He says, look, I got probably 150 patients that got, metal in their body from Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever. And he says, yeah, they want it out of their body too. But we don't do that. And so I thought, well, I'll go to Mexico because I know the standards are a little different down there. So I talked to a surgeon in Tijuana, and this is in late October of 2017. And I really wanted to get this done because I wanted to include it in the book. And I talked to the surgeon. I sent him the x-rays. He calls me back and says, yeah, I can take this out for you. It looks interesting. He says, I take bullets out of people all the time. I can do a forensic protocol for you. And I wanted to have another person in the operating room as a witness. My wife didn't want to do it, but my nephew, somebody that I could trust, could be there to be a witness. Because if this thing turned out to be extraterrestrial, which I think it was, people are going to be wanting to debunk that like crazy. Well, the last conversation I had with the surgeon was we were going to touch base again first week in December and schedule something before Christmas. And on November 11th of 2017, I woke up in terrible pain with in the top of my legs. And on both of my legs, right and left, I had a hole at the top of my leg. And that healed without a scar. But these holes were weird. There was no blood at all. I could take my fingers and spread this thing apart and look down in there and see, bone and fascia and tissue and weird, creepy stuff. And I told my wife, I said, they came and they got their material. They came and took the thing out of me. And she says, how do you know? And I said, I know. And she says, well, you got to get an x-ray. All right, well, how do you get an x-ray? You can't walk into a freestanding radiology clinic and say, hey, I want an x-ray. So I thought, and it was a Saturday. And I thought, you know what, I'll go to a chiropractor because I know these guys have x-ray equipment and they look at 50, 100 x-rays a week. So I'll go there and see them. And I says, what are you going to tell them? You going to tell them you hurt your knee or something? No, I said, no, I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm not going to lie. So I took copies of my x-rays on typing paper and took them with me. And I went to a radiologist's office that was seeing walk-in patients, and they were crowded. And I waited my turn, and a guy calls me back and says, small chat, hey, how you doing? Were you in a car accident? Something happened to you? Is your back hurt? Blah, blah, blah. Right? No. He says, where do you hurt? I said, well, right now I have pain in the top of my legs. And he said, well, let me see. And I showed him the 2 holes in my leg. And he said, how did you get this? And I said, I woke up this way. And I said, doctor, I'm going to be honest with you. I had an implant in this right leg. I got a copy of it on the x-ray here. And I think the aliens came back and took it out of my body last night. And he's like, all right, then.
Right.
You know, I don't think that I'm going to be able to help you. And he's got me by the elbow because he thinks I'm a nutcase.
Yeah.
He's walking me to the door, and I'm holding these pieces of typing paper up in front of his face, saying, take a look at these. And he stops in his tracks and says, come with me. And we went in his office. He shut the door, you know, and people were knocking and the phone's ringing. And I'm sitting in front of his desk there, and he puts the 2 pieces of paper with the x-rays on in front of me and says, tell me about these. So I told him. And he said, well, he says, I don't have x-ray equipment here. He said, we use a freestanding clinic just half a mile down the road. He says, I'll write a prescription for your x-ray and I'll pay for your x-ray with one caveat. You don't use my name and you don't use the name of my clinic, because I told him I was writing a book. And I said, I promise. And I've kept that promise. So I had my x-rays and, you know, went to the car, and those are on x-ray film. I had them here in my office, and, you know, I held them up to the glass in my car, and I could see the thing above the knee was gone and the things below my knee were still there. So
the flower was still there.
Correct.
The
Yes.
flower shape, but the one
Yes.
that looked like a chip was removed.
Yep.
Do you think perhaps the chip was meant to regulate something to do with your health? Because in regards to implants, people are suggesting it's a tracker, but you know, a lot of us have been talking about implants. They find you without the implant and then put the implant in.
That's
So
right.
they don't need it as a tracker. I was thinking maybe they were using it as a way to tell them where to return you after the abduction, because they take so many people. Maybe they're using it as a GPS kind of thing to return you to the proper place.
You know, I think it's way bigger than that. You know, I think GPS is just because we're humans, and right now that's kind of the hip thing, and
Right.
we would make that assumption that it's a tracking device. But I think it's much more than that. I really do.
Can I ask you a question? What does like Lou Elizondo or like the TTSA, what was their take on it? Did they ever tell you like, hey, we've seen these before, or this is what they think's going on?
The TTSA guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They sent, well, Lou Elizondo flew out because I had a problem with helicopters, and we don't have time to go into that, but I had helicopters buzzing my home.
Oh yeah.
And I went out and I took pictures of them, and they were all unmarked.
Black.
So I
Black.
went and pulled the
Yeah,
wall.
we all had them probably. Oh,
Right, no markings, you know the drill.
Right.
And Lou wanted to see the helicopters. So he came out and spent a day with me and had me tell the story pretty much like I'm doing right now, and had a cameraman there filming it. And they went to, they arrived at our old home, and kind of interesting, the guy who's filming it, his name was Matthew. He has a camera on his shoulder, and it's obviously a pretty decent camera. And he said, my battery's at 0. He filmed us for like 3 minutes, and then the battery just dropped to 0. And he says, I got to go out to the car, and brought back what he called a 6-pack, and, popped a new battery in it, and it was fine. But he insisted that battery was brand new. And I've had weird electrical stuff happen.
yeah. So he was with them. Was it Matt Tiller? Is that who was with them or no?
What's that?
Was it their cameraman that that Lou brought with him, or you said that was one of their people that were there?
Yeah, it was Lou Elizondo and his cameraman, Matthew.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was Matt Tiller, because I know that he had some involvement in the whole Mensa project, but
Sure could have been. If he was with TTSA, yeah, sure could have been.
okay. Yeah, but yeah, definitely. Can you go on with the story? I mean, this is fascinating. I'd love to hear more about what they think.
Yeah, they sent a medical doctor from Michigan who spent 2 days with me here. He stayed near my home at a Residence Inn, and we would go to his room, and we would. He wanted me to go through my story, and he had a recorder, and he took copious notes, asked me questions, looked at my X-rays, got a fresh set of X-rays that they kept, and was a very kind guy. Very,
Can you give us his name or?
No, I can tell you that he's associated with Nolan. What's his name?
Gary Nolan. Gary.
What's that?
Gary
Yeah,
Nolan.
Gary Nolan. Yeah,
It was like an echo. Yeah.
he's an affiliate.
Okay.
Yeah, with Gary.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then what year
He
is
asked, me,
it?
he asked me not to use his name, and I'm not.
No,
gonna
that's
do
all
it.
right. I
What
got
year? What year was
What
this?
year is it?
2019.
Okay. Very interesting.
So you
Yeah.
know what? I felt a mild bout of depression after they removed this thing from my leg. And I should have felt like on top of the world, but I felt like I lost something that was a part of me. That I know is weird, but that's how I felt.
Maybe for carrying it as long as you did, it became a part of you virtually. So that when you lost it, it was like losing part of yourself.
Yeah. You had that picture of the X-ray with the Post-it note and the arrow.
Yes.
I dropped the X-rays off at the dentist's office, at the chiropractor's office, like he asked me to do. And he was going to look at them, interpret them for me as much as he could. He's not a radiologist. And then he gave them to me. I got to keep the X-rays. On the X-ray, he says, "Well, there's this thing here," and he says it looks like a needle, and he says this is on the this is called the PA, posterior anterior shot, where they take the head on, and then they do an anterior where they do it from the side. So they call it a PA and an anterior. And you can't see it on the anterior X-ray because whatever this thing is, the femur blocks getting a good view of it. So you can only see it from really good from that perspective.
Right.
And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he says, "I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's a part of your body." And he said, I think what they did was, I think they may have given you a 2017 upgrade of a 1977 model.
Could
Maybe
be.
back in.
Very possible. Yeah. Do you have any markings that you received on the outside of your skin that you were able to locate? Scars, bruises, burns, welts,
Marks.
anything of that nature? Puncture wounds, scoop marks?
I've got a bunch of them. I think I included some in my book.
Right.
I woke up, the most interesting I thought was on my inner thigh. I had a perfectly shaped rectangle that was black and blue. I mean, it was dark black and blue. I woke up with it, never had any pain from it. And I had that same stuff for years. Little triangles on your body. Yeah, happens often, look like It looks like, you cut a triangle out of a piece of paper and strap it on you and go out in the sunlight and get a suntan, and then that is darker in color than the rest of your skin. That's what they look
Right.
like. I've had them before.
Okay. Have you had anything like a raised welt with puncture wounds in it?
Like a welt?
Welt, like a round welt with puncture wounds in it in a circle.
No, I've not. I've had a lot of people. I think Deb Caldwell has had this. A lot of people tell me that they've had these like scoop marks. They call them scoop marks, and
Right.
it looks like there's some tissue that was taken with a, little bitty ice cream scoop or something. But no,
Right.
I've never had that.
I have the welt that's raised, that's round with 5 puncture wounds. I've had it since January 1st, 2009. It happened overnight. Woke up in the morning, I was itching, and I looked down and I found it. I've been to the doctor. The doctor said it looked much like a vaccination scar, but I have no medical records going back to the time of my birth of any type of vaccination in the middle of my chest. So don't know what it is, and I still have it. And I've heard the story from a couple other people that have the same mark.
Yeah, it's fairly common.
Yeah. So that's why I was asking you if you had the mark. So maybe it's a different species. I would like to hear from Nos, because I brought her on the panel to ask a question, and so far I haven't been able to get to her. So Nos, you got
That's okay. He was very good at sharing the details from his experiences there.
Right.
What I want to ask you about, Terry, is whether you have felt that you have a specific message that you need to spread, or whether you feel called to have a specific accomplishment out there that maybe you haven't identified yet. Anything along those lines?
I don't know. I mean, I don't feel that. I don't think that. I don't have that notion in my mind that there's something. I think we all have a nagging feeling that there's something we should be doing that we're not. I think that's
Right.
the human nature. But no, I can't think that of any mission other than, I am their lab rat, for lack of a better term, and I have been since probably birth. And someone asked me at a conference one time if you could go back and undo it and take all this away and just lead a normal life and not have any involvement with this, would you do it? And I said, probably not. I mean, it's kind of who I am, and it's a part of me. So
Yeah.
I think people should know about it.
Right.
It is hard to talk about at first. Like your family's like, oh, like are people, like you said, I go to the doctor, like, listen to me, like this is serious. You know what I mean? Like I'm telling you, it sounds crazy. I get that. But I mean, this stuff is happening and there is really nowhere to turn, like in those places. I remember going back to MUFON and I was like, all right, what's the next step? He's like, I don't know. Did you see through the veil? And I was like, what? But it changed my course of life completely. Like, it took
Yes.
over. And like you said, that obsession and like trying to figure it out and finding out. I mean, it was unbelievable how locked in at times. I get like when I talk about it, I get excited about it. It's like, that feeling. But I missed it too, because you always have those high activity points. And then when it got lower, like, and then I kind of, got distracted from it. I felt like I was missing something, like of myself, like
Yes.
missing and I'm thinking, man, like, it's like almost like a familiar, like family, like you or even, I don't know, like you're just missing a piece of all of this and somebody, it's like, or a group of people. I don't know. It just feels like that part's missing.
Yeah, what do you
I
think,
think it's
Anthony?
really hard for the general public, and we're seeing this play out right now, and there are politics involved, but the people like that want disclosure,
Right.
and then the people that don't want disclosure. And there's a lot of money in the defense industry. in DARPA, and with
Yes.
civilian contractors, they employ lots and lots of people. You know,
A lot of
Boeing,
power, a lot of
General
control
Douglas.
behind the scenes. Yep.
So it's a complicated issue, but it's tough, I think, for human beings to wrap their head around the fact that we're not the apex predator. We're not the end all and be all.
Don't you
know.
think we're programmed since childhood not to believe in monsters, not to believe in aliens because they're scary? We're told not to believe in them through programming, through shows and stuff. They're here to eat us. They're here to conquer us.
Right.
We're told to be afraid. So maybe that's why a lot of people can't wrap their head around the idea, because of the portrayals being silly in some aspect, and in other aspect being extremely scary, that they just don't want to wrap their mind around that type of subject matter because it scares them.
Yeah, and I think ET does have influence over us. But that not wanting to believe, even in the face of unbelievable evidence, you know, Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, I mean, the evidence is there.
I have friends that say they don't believe, yet they're obsessed with discussing the subject.
Oh,
So
they'll get mad at you. They'll actually get angry.
Yeah, I've had it before too. Like, well,
the only people that get angry with me are the very devout religious people.
Oh,
Because when you bring up, alien life, oh no, they're demons.
Oh,
Or they don't exist. I don't want to talk about it because God made man and we're the chosen people. Okay, well, I always point out to them one statement, and that is God created the heavens, plural, and the earth. So the heavens is the universe. That means he created everything in it. So I think people should be more open-minded to the fact that they exist.
well, I think that was a big part of the church too. And now, you know, if they kind of, it's part of me wants to normalize it, and the other part wants those people to stay out of it. I'm not trying to be rude here, but if like you have no like day one, you know, and trying to explain, I'm not going to convince anybody. I'm not even going to try. I don't care. I know they're real. Like I'm already past that, so it's like, you know, kind of keep moving along. But yeah, it just, I don't know if we need the public. I think that they might like it might not end up very good for us, is what I'm thinking.
yeah.
In many ways.
Hey, Nicole, do me a favor. Stand up and show your hoodie.
Oh yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, isn't
Sweat.
that awesome? I love it. I need one.
Sweatshirts. Everybody can see, and then you can see the hat. Yeah, this sweatshirt, super comfy, super comfy. Love it.
Thank
Odessa asked a question about nightmares, and I'm glad that we can address that.
Yes.
Because nightmares have been just the bane of my existence since this incident. Really bad at first, you know, 10 years, and then somewhat better. I still have maybe 5 a year. And you know, they're always the same. You know, there's a half dozen scripts that they can play, and they play in my head. And you know, I can't sleep with the light off. Got to have a light on. I had really had a lot of trouble sleeping in a motel room. And you know, the blinds got to be closed. I got a routine I got to go through, walk around and make sure the doors are locked and everything's in order. And you know what? That's real common for abductees to have that sense of.
Are you afraid of the dark?
Right.
The night sky?
Well, you know, and a lot of us have trouble sleeping because that's when the monsters come out. Close your eyes and you don't know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go? And that's just it. It's like, there's always a trade-off because Andrew Rollins, he's in the chat here, and he's one person in the beginning. I found like a group of people who had experienced this, and he happened to be one of them. And so we talked about like the symptom, like you almost feel like you had the flu after, how thrown off or how like off-centered. So it's like this group that was offering empathy that understood. So then one of us would go through it, like, or if Andrew would go through it, or like I would go through it, that we'd have like this great empathy for one another because we knew that transitional period once you made it through that, like, just because I think it's just so much to wrap your mind around. It's just like now
that pushback that we get where people get, we'll get angry about it. I had to read a book called Plato's Republic in college. And in it, in the sixth book, there's a thing called the cave allegory. And I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but I'll cut to the chase real quick. It's these four people are chained up in this cave, and all they can see is shadows on the wall. Of course, it's not a real thing. It's an allegory. It's a story. And one of them gets loose, goes out, discovers there's a whole new world out there. There's sunshine, there are creeks, there are birds, there are grass. There's all kinds of stuff they didn't have back in the cave. He goes back to the cave and finds his friends and says, guys, there's a whole world out there you wouldn't believe. It's incredible. You got to come with me. Let's get out of here. Come with me. And they're like, you're crazy. We don't want anything to do with you. Get the hell out of here. And they were dismissive. And I just think that that's a great, written 2,000 years ago, but I think that that's a great
allegory.
Allegory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great example. People are in their own box. That's how I look at it. They don't want to climb out of their box and see what's outside of it. They're used to, in fact, my neighbor told me recently, he said, Tim, you spend way too much time on the computer. You're not really dealing with real life. You're not seeing the possibility of work, the possibility of coming home and relaxing and watching TV and socializing with your friends and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I have a separate life online, which is part of my life. And he said, well, that's not part of reality. He's in his own box, is what I'm saying.
That's right.
And
That's right.
he can't see out of it. Whereas I'm trying to look outside my box. And so is everybody on
that's
this
the gift that
panel.
ET gave us,
Right.
I mean, I know thousands of people. I know there's a UFO community in the world, and I'm a member of it. And I know lots of people in it, and they know me. And I feel like they're kind of a family almost.
Mhm.
And, that's cool. And, Tim, you got UFO Man has thousands of people out there that watch you, that listen to you, that correspond with you, that you talk to and interact with. So
Yes.
I don't get that at all.
But we consider you part of our UFO Man family, Terry.
Yes,
So
we do.
don't worry about that ever.
Oh, yeah.
have-
I mean, the guy that you got into the back and forth with. Who
right,
said
I
you spent
understand.
much time on the computer.
Terry, do you think it's because people don't think that you'll be available? Sometimes they, if you put yourself, like people would love to engage you and hear your story. If you would be willing, usually people are not willing to do that, But if that's something, hey, I mean, I think that or you're trying to, listen to we've got some great groups going on online too, that I know, that you should check out, really.
Well, I did 120 podcasts during the lockdown. And I've been to
Wow.
Contact in the Desert, and I've been to all the conferences, and that was a great experience. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And everyone was nice. I had one guy out of thousands. I'm sitting at my booth selling books, and a guy walks up to me, picks up a copy of Incident at Devil's Den, and throws it at me on the table and says, "Prove it to me."
Oh, God. Move along.
I'm not out to prove anything. I'm telling you my
Right.
story. You can believe it or not. It's up to you. I don't
Right.
care.
Right. Nancy, do you have a question?
Well, I was wondering if any of y'all, all of you, are aware that the big bowl game that we had Sunday, there was 8 commercials about extraterrestrials,
Aliens.
UFOs, aliens.
Yeah.
So, do y'all not feel that the world around us is changing and people are waking up?
I think that there's going to be, supposedly there are 17 first, eyewitnesses. David Grush had never seen this, but 17 people that can step up to Congress to, behind closed doors and say, yeah, I saw, biological material. I saw this, I saw that in the first person. David Grush is great. I don't know if anybody, you probably did listen to some of it or all of it when he spoke at the House hearing with Graves and I forget the other guy's name. They were both pilots.
Ryan Graves and
Faber.
Faber.
Favor.
Yeah, from the
Fravor,
Tic Tac event in
Yeah.
2004. Yeah. So I think that is an unsettled piece of business. There's been some
Well,
cool UFO sightings in the past year too.
you do know that David Grush actually did have a classified skiff with congressional leaders, including Burchett, Tim Burchett out of Tennessee.
Burkett, yeah.
Yeah, he actually got to listen to David Grush testify on that stuff. He said in the unclassified briefing, where he said, "Oh, I can't tell you unless I tell you behind closed doors." And according to Tim Burchett, nothing really of value was delivered
Yeah,
because
that's what I heard too.
David Grush only heard it as a third party. So he
It's
wasn't
hearsay.
the one releasing it, right? So it's speculation.
What happened to all the witnesses? There was like 70 something witnesses. Didn't they say they had? You never heard anything about that.
Well, they're out there, and David Grush, they yanked all of his security clearances.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
They gave him back.
Yeah.
Oh, they gave him back.
They
See,
gave
I
him
would
back.
feel better if he were hiding over in Russia with Edward Snowden or, locked up with, Assad. So like if in these whistleblowers, I'm thinking, man, like, is this intentional? Is this an intentional release of information? Is this, you know what I mean? Like they think they're a whistleblower. Come on, stumble onto this. It's like planned,
Mhm.
I look at the responses that I got from people that read Devil's Den and wrote to me, and 5,000 isn't a big sample. I mean, in the scope of
No.
things. But I had a helicopter pilot out of a base up north, and he did a 6-month tour of. He would just hang out, shoot pool, go in the day room, make himself comfortable. But he'd get a call, and then there were 2 doctors, 2 scientists that would go with him, and they would fly to a ranch and land in the middle of a field where there's a tree, and there'd be a dead animal. And not predation, we're talking about something else. And he said that and when there were 2 other guys, they brought 2 big, strong guys, and the carcasses didn't weigh a ton anyway. The blood was all gone; they weren't that heavy, and they put these things in like a body bag and put them in the back of the helicopter. And interesting thing he said is, a couple times he did maybe a dozen of these, and he said a couple of times scientists would take a white envelope out of their pocket and hand it to the rancher, who would nod and accept it. So a check Cash?
Sounds like a payoff. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Ryan?
But yeah, you know, and then Robert Matthews, who wrote a book. I wrote the foreword to his book. He was the intelligence officer on the Princeton that
Really?
was there when Roosevelt had the experience, and Kevin Day, who's coming out with a new book.
Right.
he-
I talked to him.
Yeah,
Kevin Day is great.
Yeah.
His new book is about what, Terry?
it's about the event. It's about he's the guy that coined the phrase "it was raining UFOs."
Right. I remember that because he said multiple tic tac shaped objects were dropping from the sky like rain when he first saw them.
Yeah.
We had him on the channel this past year. So yeah, very interesting subject. You know that movie that came out with it was called Terror in the Sky
Mhm.
with Caroline Corey and David Altman, David Mason. They actually recorded objects falling from the sky in the same manner, right off the Catalina Island. So that is almost indicative of what happened when Kevin Day saw the same thing.
Yeah, he saw them on his X-rays. He was a radar operator and intelligence guy, and he's the one that tells the story about the Air Force helicopter. They're on a naval vessel out in the sea, and an Air Force helicopter from somewhere lands on the deck of the Princeton, and he said he had to take the cassettes out from all of his radar equipment, and little handles on them, you carry them, and he said, went outside, and the two guys took them away, put them in the helicopter, and left.
Makes you wonder what they're protecting and why. And
Or
I'm gonna
redirecting.
refer this to Nos. Nos.
Well, we know that what they're protecting is their own personal interest in maintaining the illusion that any government on this planet has power. Right? They like the sense of power that they have and the control that they get to exert over people by continuing that illusion of power and manipulating financial resources and things like that. But the moment that the public en masse comes to the acceptance of the celestial influence in human lives now and throughout history, the illusion of governmental power is gone. The illusion of religious authority is gone, right? All of the structures of manipulating power and taking power away from the general population are gone. And they have to struggle to maintain what they have. And a few of them believe they're doing it for good reasons, right? That if society is subjected to all this information too quick, they're going to crumble. They need us here telling them what to do to keep them safe. But it doesn't matter because disclosure en masse is coming, and they've had their opportunity to handle it at a gradual pace, and now it's being taken out of their hands.
Do you think? I think that when disclosure happens, when it happens, and I don't care how it's orchestrated. I don't care if they're aliens on the White House lawn. Whatever you do, there's going to be a portion of the population, probably 20% or so, that are going to say, "Oh, that's crap. That's not true." I don't
the
believe
government's the one who comes out and says it. Shouldn't we all be a little cautious? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We landed on the moon.
That's a movie.
Somebody else's house, please.
That's a movie being done on the White House lawn. We know it's fake.
No, I know, but can you imagine? I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not even going there.
Well, what would be interesting is the person that makes that comment publicly gets abducted
Yeah.
and then
Right.
returns.
You would. Yeah. It would take a
The
couple.
AI generated deep fake technology that's available now, it doesn't matter if it's video recorded on the White House lawn
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, because
Right.
AI and all this other stuff is. I said we taken our videos, like we're kind of like the last generation to where it's even going to be believable without having to run it through, and that
Yes,
sucks. That really
every
sucks.
person every person on Earth has to have a personal experience with celestials to believe in them, because nothing is becoming believable anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Brian McGlade from the chat room says disclosure has happened. They acknowledge UAP. Well, the problem with that is they acknowledge that there are things flying around, but they also acknowledge that they do not know where they're coming from, who has possession of them, whether it be a foreign adversary or us in general. And they also have admitted to the fact that they're nuts and bolts rather than something from a different realm or dimension, because they can't make that claim because they don't know. So that's the problem.
Yeah. You got to identify
Even
them.
while
And stuff they use, I think, what is it? IA. Oh my gosh.
IAE,
IAE.
identify,
right?
IEA,
International Atomic
identified
Energy Commission.
extraterrestrial aircraft,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Anyways, there are different terminology,
Mhm.
right?
Looking
Nicole?
at the UFOs and the UAPs and all that other stuff, that they're not even, you want to go to what's been identified. And that's where I think they try to keep the distraction from. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I kind of think the commercials, in regards to Nancy Tim's question, the commercials that they had during the Super Bowl were not necessarily to show us, hey, there is an alien issue going on. I think it was to distract us from current geopolitical things. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. To keep your mind off of geopolitical issues, let's just make it silly with flying saucers, and it almost demeaned the subject too by the way they portrayed them.
And not to mention throw Project Bluebeam out there, which is going to make everybody skeptical, because that technology is coming out. And there again, we wrap around to technology,
Yeah. Well, I look at it this way, Terry. You went through an extremely traumatic event. What with those objects being put in your leg and you carrying them for so long. And I'm sure you experienced ridicule at some time in your life.
Well, you know what? I never came public with this until 2018.
Okay, well, 2018 on, did you get any ridicule whatsoever?
I got a few hateful emails. I mean, only a few that were from fundamentalist Christians who say that, this is demons and you shouldn't be messing with this. And a few of those. And I had one guy that I worked with we worked together at the AG's office, call me up and say, "Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? People are going to think you're crazy." And I'm like, "Well, this is real."
It is, yeah.
He's like, "Oh, you're nuts." But no, very, very few. Very, very few.
YOY Fools in the chat says, "Where are the demons at?" I just had to say that.
Oh boy.
Like your sock puppet there, YOY Fools. Very nice. Let's see here.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is we really appreciate you coming back on, Terry, and talking about your subject matter again. I have a couple questions before you go, because I didn't get to ask them earlier. When you were aboard the Triangle, What do you remember when you were on board?
Okay, I don't have, I never have had a clear linear memory of what happened to me in there. All I have is bits and pieces. I know that, it's like I open my eyes and I'm in this huge, huge place. And I don't know if they took us to another location, but the place that I was inside of was much bigger than what this craft looked like from the outside. I don't know if they have different physics apply or whatever, but it did not look to be the same thing. I mean, the thing I was inside of looked like an NFL stadium.
Was the picture I showed you before the show part of the ship?
Yeah,
The
that's
one-
from ship from the outside. Yeah, from the outside, it looked as big as a Walmart. Yeah, that's kind of trying to portray what I was in and not doing a very good job of it from perspective wise, because, I'm just not that good at drawing with perception, but or from perspective. But I'm trying to portray that this thing was huge. That's all.
And you said that it had 3 UFO discs floating off the ground with no supports.
Yeah, there were these things like a golf cart. And I saw one of them, a thing like a golf cart with a bunch of grays in it, kind of tooling around. And there were flying saucers lined up next to what looked like big garage doors. So,
Wow. And then
And
it
then-
says here, hallway to fetal hybrids in tanks of pink liquid.
Oh, the pink guy?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll have to make this quick because it's a long story, but while
Okay.
I was standing there, Toby and I both they stripped us. I had all my clothing and my boots in my hands, holding them in my arms. I could not move. I was paralyzed. I could move my eyes. I could roll my eyeballs around, just like Calvin Parker reported, but I couldn't move. And I saw this guy. Grays were all over the place running around. Nobody was taking a smoke break there. These guys were all, they were all task oriented. And that's what makes me think that they're not sentient. But I saw this guy from my peripheral vision to my right who was tall, was maybe 6 foot tall. So he's twice as tall as these Grays. And he walks with an air of authority. You can watch somebody walk and you can tell, if this guy walked like he was not only a crewman, but somebody in charge.
Right.
Or at least, and I got that vibe. I don't know. And I watched him. I rolled my eyes to the side and I watched him walk to my left. And he stopped. And this incident is the most frightening thing that happened to me. And this comes back in my nightmares more often than it should. But this was really what scared me the most. And I saw some pretty scary stuff. This guy, I'm looking at him. I'm straining my eyes. I can't move my head, straining my eyes to the left. Just by happenstance, he turns his head and we lock eyes. And it was incredible. This guy was in my head. And I don't know any other way to say it. He knew me. He knew my history. He knew my wife. He knew my secrets. He knew everything about me. And I've heard people say download. If that's what this was, it was overwhelming.
Wow.
And that's what he got from me. What I got from him, what I got from those black eyes, was just raw intellect. And I felt, intellectually inadequate, emotionally, physically. This guy was an apex predator. I mean, he was a level above us. And that was the spooky thing.
When you said
Wow.
predator, what made you specify him as a predator rather than just say sentient being?
Predators. I'm glad you asked that because predators find probably not the correct word. I was thinking the phrase apex predator, but really I just meant on the ladder of of intelligence, they're above us.
Right.
You felt
Okay.
fragile compared.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask you about the other picture real quick. This one here, the signage that you saw on board. Can you explain any of it?
Yeah, I can explain some of it. See the thing down at the bottom that looks like a tree
Yes.
or a plant or something?
Or veins.
That was some kind of emblem. Inside of this thing, there was lots of stainless steel and white walls. And that emblem was engraved in the stainless steel. And it seemed like some kind of identifier, like it was, like their symbol. The other things, I had nightmares and I had a compulsion to get up and draw and write. And I would do that in the middle of the night for years. And this is one of those drawings from the middle of the night. And I kept it because it was, I felt like it was significant in some way. In what way?
Yeah.
I have no idea. But the only thing that I can recognize is it looks like there's a saucer there, a moon, and that bush thing, like I say, at the bottom is there is an emblem that I saw.
Very interesting because people don't always record what they see on the inside. So that's very interesting to me. The other picture I wanted to show was this.
Yes,
This is your drawing of the craft from one side.
that's a drawing of what I call the big ship. And that's the one that, and this is an hour story, but that's to get to the chase. That's the one that Betty told me that can't fly across the face of the full moon because they'll see it from Earth. And I said, what, with telescopes? And she said, no, with the naked eye. And she told me how many kilometers this thing was. It was enormous.
500.
500 kilometers. And then, yeah, and it's shaped like a big rectangular box. And flying saucers come and go. And
75 kilometers high. That's really huge.
yeah, I don't know what that equates to in miles, but that's big enough to be seen on Earth if it flew across the face of the moon. You could
Wow.
see it.
Yeah, that's very interesting as well. I have to say that the one that you saw, this one, was 2 stories high, correct?
It may have been a little deeper than that. It was
Or
at
maybe-
least, I'll say it's at least 2 stories tall.
And you said it was about the size of a Walmart,
Yeah.
made absolutely no sound.
Well, you know what? I don't remember hearing the sound. I remember hearing the sound turn off.
Okay.
Right before this thing took off, there was a low humming noise that I guess was like at a baseline. I didn't recognize it until they shut it off. And in the
Right.
absence of the humming noise was what I heard.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify a few things before we went to last comments. Let's go to last comments around the panel. We'll start with Nicole. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I was listening in intently, but I just have to say that you have a very interesting story and connecting some of the dots, and I look forward to hearing more from you, and just kind of, I guess, the dots that you connect with this. I mean, it is just so much you shared today. That was absolutely fabulous, and I appreciate that,
Right.
and I thank you for being part of the disclosure. So it's not a question; it's more of a comment, but yeah, very impressive. Like, I enjoyed all of it. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Odessa.
So my question is shared by a few people in our chat audience as well. And it's not really a direct question. It's more like, if you ever do regressive hypnosis, will you come tell us about it? Because we've got we would like to know more. I know you've told us, a lot of information. We want to always know more. But if you ever do go under hypnosis and learn anything, will you share it with us?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're on my list, man. I'm gonna call UFO Man before I call. I've got a list with about 10 people on it, and
Good.
Bring
I'm
the
gonna
story
share it.
here first. Yes. We'll break
Yes.
it.
We'll break
Yeah,
it
there
for
you
you,
go.
Terry. We'll definitely show you the respect and the professionalism that you deserve.
Absolutely.
Oh, you treat every guest like that. Yeah, you guys are great.
Nos.
Okay, this is an easy one. Do you think humanity is going to make it?
Do I think humanity is going to make it?
Yeah, as in, are they going to survive themselves?
No, I don't.
I would
And I
like
don't
to
have
see
any
us.
super insight for that. I don't have anything other than a gut feeling, but I don't feel optimistic about the future of humanity, and it's a shame. I feel bad about that. And I
Yeah.
think there's a rush to go to the moon. There's a rush to get to Mars, and a seat on the rocket to Mars is going to be like a place in the lifeboat from the Titanic.
Right.
I don't have an optimist. Not optimistic about the future.
Be honest with you, if I could get a seat on a ship to Mars, I'd go.
Yeah.
Because, like you
Oh, yeah.
said, the outlook for planet Earth is not that great.
I would not go.
You would not go. I drag
Gravity
you
belts
with.
might not make it through if you don't have the right equipment.
See, I'll drag you with along with everybody else on the panel because that's where the UFO Man team's going to broadcast from. All right. Anyways, Nancy.
Well, on the extreme opposite, I have all the faith in the world for humanity, and I see great things coming for us. And we have to start being more positive, or these things will never happen. We kind of make our own reality. So we have to think of the beautiful end product and not look at all the negative aspects. So one thing I would like to ask you, though, is when you were coming up with your symbols, did you like wake up from a dream and those things came to mind and you decided to draw them out?
I felt compelled to draw them out.
Yeah.
I would have a dream. I'd wake up, and I kept a sketch pad by my bedside, and I would turn on my lamp and draw. And
Yeah. When I saw the one that you were referring to as the bush, the first thing that comes to my mind is it shows us at the bottom and all those stems and places going out is all our connections to everything in this world around us, including the universe, which also would include extraterrestrials and interdimensionals. So what that is you're seeing us as the base, but we are branching out and discovering who we are and our place and all these wonderful things that are going to happen to us.
I sure hope you're right, and I do my best to be optimistic, but and I don't want to spread fear. I don't want to spread panic, but if I'm asked a question, I'm going to answer it honestly.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody should ask questions and everybody has to figure things out on their own. But I think it's pretty beautiful because that's exactly what you drew.
Yeah. And plus we need the balance, we need to be cautious and we also need to have that optimism that Nancy has. So I think it's, that's on both parts. That's good. That's a good team,
Prove
we
me
need to
wrong,
help
Nancy.
another better.
I will. I'm working on that.
Yeah, keep us positive, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Yeah, no, it rubs off. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Nicole Weber for making it back this week.
We did
Oh,
miss you.
It's very cool that she's here. We really missed her. And Terry, I'm very glad that you were able to come on again. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Really appreciate it. And hope to keep touch with you more often than I have lately, and I will do so. Okay.
Yes.
If you're interested in his books are Devil's Incident at Devil's Den. I don't know if you can see that with the glare. Okay. And his other one is this one, Devil's Den, The Reckoning by Terry Lovelace, Esquire. You can find them at terrylovelace.com, or you can find them on Amazon. They are also available on Audible. So check it out. Get a copy, send one to him, have him sign it, send him postage, and he can send it back to you. So cool. Then you'll have a signed copy.
Ooh, I
That's
gotta do
that's the way to go. I have 2 signed copies. I'm very protected and protective of
no.
that.
We need to get a library going back and forth here, but I don't think Tim would let those out of his hands.
No,
Pry 'em
I'll
out.
share them as long as you send them back.
Yeah, I
Um,
will.
All right. So I want to thank everybody who watched online, everybody who participated in the chat room, and thanks to everybody on the panel. We'll see you next week, and good night from everybody here at UFO Man.
We would like you to join us on Wednesday, February 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on UFO Man. We will be featuring the intrepid Laura Eisenhower. The great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, or Laura, will be focusing on the connection of consciousness and the UFO phenomenon. We at the UFO Man team hope to see you there. Thanks for watching, and good night.
That was cool.